Hello everyone. My PhD thesis title is The Relation Between the Maternal Factors and the Birth Defects. My name is Zihan, and I'm a biostatistician currently working in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Semmelweis University. My mission is to provide a closer maternity counseling to prevent birth defects, and my vision is to increase the mother awareness and education and make fewer birth defects. Currently, I have two specific goals. The first one is investigating the association between the maternal risk factors and the congenital birth defects, which start from September last year. And the second one is investigating the association between the maternal ambient air pollution exposure and birth defects, which start from the April. Both of them are systematic reviews and meta-analysis. Let's start from my first project. Congenital birth defects account for 1% of the prevalence in newborn babies, which is the leading cause of the newborn deaths. According to the data from Eurocat, for the severe congenital birth defects cases, only 40% of the mothers receive the prenatal diagnosis, and only 20% of them receive this diagnosis before 25 weeks of the gestation. It is worth noting that up to 30% of the congenital birth defects cases are associated with maternal environmental factors. So we aim to identify the maternal risk factors that are associated with congenital birth defects. Our clinical question is, what maternal environmental factors are associated with the risk of the congenital birth defects? We use the PECO framework. The populations are the pregnant women. Exposures are the maternal risk factors. The comparison is the absence of the risk factors, and the outcomes are congenital birth defects. We make a hypothesis here. Some maternal factors will increase the risk of the developing congenital birth defects. The systematic search was conducted on November 16, 2023. The search key has been divided into 3 domains. The first domain is the pregnant women and its synonyms. And the second domain is the risk factors and the maternal exposures. The last domain is the congenital birth defects and its the most common 10 phenotypes. After two cycles of selections, we've got 67 eligible studies from our search key. Additionally, 19 eligible studies were obtained from the reference choosing. Finally, we've got 86 eligible studies. This first plot shows the maternal association between the maternal smoking and the congenital birth defects. The maternal smoking is defined as the active smoking during the first trimester of the pregnancy, and the information was collected by the self-reporting data. We include 19 studies, and all of them are case control studies and cohort studies. The I-square equals to 83%, which indicates the high level of the heterogeneity. We believe that the source of the heterogeneity should be because of the different study types. And also, some studies, they use only the univariate model as their final result. And lastly, some studies, they have very low study populations because the smoking bans in their countries. The pooled odds ratio is 1.28 with significant relevance and statistical significance. It suggests that the marginal smoking will increase the risk of the congenital birth defects by 28%. The second forest plot is the aggregated forest plot for all the marginal factors. The data in this forest plot was derived from the pooled odds ratios from the meta-analysis. As you can see here, we found that the marginal obesity, diabetes, smoking, chronic hypertension, and preeclampsia was significantly associated with the congenital birth defects in their offspring. We have some strengths in these studies. We include different marginal risk factors and also many congenital birth defects phenotypes. Also, we include a high number of the mother with their infant pairs. And the last but not least, we apply the rigorous methodology. The various cutoff values of the risk factors, self-reported outcome assessment, and no consideration of the covariance should be the potential limitations for this study. In summary, diabetes, obesity, smoking, chronic hypertension, and preeclampsia were found to be the critical marginal risk factors for congenital birth defects and offspring during the first trimester of the pregnancy. This study may contribute to the pre-pregnancy counseling and the pregnancy care. We highly suggest that for the future study, they should conduct the longitudinal study and the population-based study to investigate the impact of the demographic factors on the relationship between the marginal factors and the congenital birth defects. Currently, we have near 70 figures and 2 tables. And we finished the full text writing, and then for the next few weeks, we are working on the supplementary material. The second project is investigating the association between the marginal ambient air pollution, exposure, and the birth defects. The birth defects is defined as the structural or functional disorders present at the birth, which is the leading cause to the disabilities and death in newborns. According to the data from the Eurocat, about 2.8% of the babies were born with a birth defect, and only about 2.5% of the live births died within a week. And the ambient air pollution is the leading health risk factors and always associated with adverse vital outcomes, especially during the week 3 to 8 of the pregnancy. So we aim to investigate the association between the ambient air pollutant and the birth defects. Our clinical question is, does the first trimester high exposure to the ambient air pollutants compared to the low level of the exposures increase the risk of the birth defects? We use the PECO framework here. The populations are pregnant women. Exposures is the high exposure to the ambient air pollutants, and the comparison is the low exposure to the ambient air pollutants. And outcomes are birth defects. We make hypothesis here. High marginal exposure to the ambient air pollutants will increase the risk of developing the birth defects in newborns. Our preliminary research was conducted on the April 4th. And the search key also has been divided into 3 domains. The first domain is the pregnant women and its phenotypes. The second domain will include not only the risk factors and the marginal exposures, but also the air pollutants and the air pollutants and the subtypes of the air pollutants. And the final domain is the birth defects and its synonyms. Currently, we finished the draft of the Prospero protocol, and we submit, it had been modified on the April 8th. In summary, currently two projects ongoing. The first one is investigating association between the marginal risk factors and congenital birth defects. We plan to submit during in July of this year. Second one is the association between the marginal ambient air pollution, exposure, and the birth defects. We plan to submit in February next year. Thanks for your attention. My quote is, he was of an active nature and yet fond of learning, and he was not ashamed to ask and learn of his inference. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your excellent presentation, and I would like to ask first, how could you differentiate between the low and the high air pollution?
That's a good question, because there is a standard on the WHO Air Quality Agency. So they have, I think they have updated for every 5 years. So they have the standard level. That means that means the cutoff value that human exposure to the air pollution, they will have the health risk. So we can use that cutoff value, and this is the consensus cutoff value to differentiate the high level and the low level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I ask the audience, please.
I'm Isabel from the Garnero Group. Zihan, I'm interested in your strategy to select the articles from your second project. So what is your strategy? Are you going to use any automated tools to select all of those 60,000 references or TTK students?
That's a good question. For my first project, I do it by myself, so it is a nightmare, actually. So for my second project, I think after I finish the first project, I will recruit 1 or 2 TDK students to help me to do it, because I think if I do it by myself, I think I need 3 more months to do it.
But I have to mention as a supervisor of Zihan that 26,000 articles for Zihan is just a week or something like this.
First is just a comment. If you agree, I would come up with a more telling term for maternal factors, because maternal environmental factors for me in your first project, like it's like air pollution and stuff. Maternal factor is also very broad, so maybe maternal health factor or something which is more specific. And could you please put your odds ratios into more context? So, for example, an odds ratio of 2 for some maternal health factors. So does it mean like an increase of cardiac birth defects from 0.25% to 0.5%, or from 0.5% to 1% between control and exposed? So what does this odds ratio in terms of prevalence mean?
I think the odds ratio in my study, it should be the risk of the developing congenital heart defects for these mothers who are exposed to the factors, and compare with those mothers without these factors.
I see, but what are the prevalences here and there, just for us to know, like, what percentages are we dealing with? The occurrence of birth defects within healthy mothers and obese and smoking mothers?
It should be the incidence.
The exact numbers, do you have some data on the exact?
But at the beginning of the presentation, he presented about the prevalence of the congenital heart defects, about 1%. 0.9
Yes,
per thousand.
I see that's an average, but there was just huge difference between the exposed and non-exposed.
Yes. It should be different for the different countries and the different regions, and actually we didn't summarize it. I'm so sorry. So okay. Yeah, but it will present on the forest plot, because there's an issue that some studies use a prevalence. Because some of them, they are population-based study. They have so many.
My comment is just it would add some, like, for the clinical interpretation of your odds ratio, if you could like pair some prevalences to it. Thank you.
Connect to the prevalences.
Yes,
yeah. Okay. So, okay. And for your first question, I think environmental factors in the it's just a broad concept. I mean the risk factors, except to the genetic factors, they can all count to the environmental factors. So I think, yes, there should be a problem, but yes, we have discussed in my article. So, yeah, thank you.
Congratulations, Zihan, to a very nice presentation. I got one brief question. In your maternal risk and smoking, there was one study that showed that smoking was protective factor, if I see it correctly.
Yes.
At all.
Smoking is
What's going on with its study? Did you consider to excluding it based on, I don't know, being outlier or maybe some other?
You mean this one?
Yes, the stall at all.
They have so many outliers, I think. Yeah.
The top one, stall.
It looks like the protective, right? So,
what's going on with that study?
That's a crazy result. So, well, I think that's because of the, as you can see, this study is very old. So and also they only use a univariate model. So that should be the outlier comes from. So if they use the multivariate analysis and maybe they got a non-significant result. So I believe that should be some mistakes or some bias happen on the statistical methods. Yes, because because if you only focus on the univariate model, and there are so many confounding factors that may impact on it, but they didn't control it, so that should be a problem.
Thank you very much.
But we can't exclude them in the meta-analysis. That's a problem.
Okay, thank you.